guys, Bipolar Barbie here. Now today I just want to do a video on this idea of the ultimate truth. Now I feel very strongly about this because I do not believe that there is ever an ultimate truth, but I do think that there are way too many people in this world that do believe in the ultimate truth, and I think that really does influence and affect people with borderline personality disorder, or just people in general, you know. I honestly believe that everyone has their own truth. We are all entitled to our own truth, and that doesn't mean that we are wrong or we are right. We all experience the world in different ways, in unique ways that are shaped by our experiences. So I thought I would go into detail and kind of explain this. Then I remembered that I have actually done a whole complete chapter in my book on this idea of the ultimate truth. I think it's going to be my opening chapter for my book, and yes, I am writing a book. I know you keep asking me about it, but like, seriously, do you know how hard it is to write a book? It's going to be called The Story of a Borderline Princess, and it's basically going to be my life story. The princess that was rejected by the king and queen, kicked out of the castle, and then kind of goes on this lifelong adventure trying to find princes, you know, to validate her claim. But I guess at the end of the day, she kind of realizes that it's her birthright to be a queen, and she shouldn't endeavor to be rescued like a damsel in distress. She doesn't need a king or a prince. You know, she can rule in her own right. And as much as she's yearning to go back to the castle, she kind of realizes that the castle is simply not her people, and that her people are in the outside world. So I think it's going to be an inspirational story. It's probably also going to be a bit heart-wrenching if you've seen a lot of the stuff I've done on borderline personality disorder, but I'm really passionate about it. I think it's going to be really great. Let me know what you think, but I've decided to share this chapter with you because I think it's really important. It's kind of going to be the first chapter in my book that is basically going to set the scene for the whole book, because I know it might not be the truth as other people see it, but it's my truth, and I think it's really important to clarify that from the very beginning. So this is going to be my first reading from my book, so I hope you like it. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you're excited for this book to come out, and if you think it'll be worth my time to complete it. So here we go. If you ask my father, there is one truth. This idea of the ultimate truth has derailed me many times. My father believed the truth, a concept I never quite understood. I felt like my parents trying to educate my child that refused to open up their eyes. He was blinded by the truth. He was naive and ignorant enough to believe that the ultimate truth truly existed, and that he was smart enough to know it. As a result, he denied my truth. We each have our own truth. We are taught that right and wrong is black or white, and you are either telling the truth or lying. Liars deserve to be punished. My father believed liars were the lowest of scum. When caught out in a lie, you would be banished from ever having the benefit of the doubt. From that moment on, you were a liar. There was no room to change his mind. To him, there were certain type of people that told lies, and no one else. A lie was never a singular occurrence. Once a liar, always a liar, he preached. Never again would you be believed. The instant you were caught out in a lie, you became untrustworthy. As an intelligent young child, I set out to find the definition of what a lie was. You were told it's when you twisted the truth, bend the truth, make up a story, exaggerate a story, or flat out deny an accusation that appears to be true. When you fabricate facts or deny facts others see, then you are labeled a liar. A proud man like my father considered it his duty to find and expose liars. Publicly ridiculing them, he was committed to his job, that he believed he could see the truth in everything. Some things are black and white. As far as the, physical facts and the evidence, there might be a truth. For example, if my mother's vase was broken. But whether or not I had intentions to break that vase is really just someone's subjective opinion. But he would go as far as claiming he could tell the truth about very private and internal things, like my thoughts and inner feelings. He claimed he knew every single thought that I had. He claimed to know every single feeling that I had. Daring to express yourself in my house, or hold or have an opinion, and you were free to be slaughtered. Your opinion is wrong, he would say. No, you don't feel upset. I know what you feel, he would claim. The judge's verdict was always final. So began a lifetime of invalidation. He took great pleasure in telling me what I thought and what I felt, despite how I tried to correct him. Every protest, every debate that he may have been false in his accusations or his opinion of me was simply dismissed by the fact that he was always right, at least in his mind. He knew me better than I even knew myself, or so he claimed. I was never granted the right to deny his opinions of me. My father considered himself to be a worldly man. Street smart, he used to call himself. He knew everything he needed to know about people in the world that we lived in. Strange for a man that's never left the country. Brought up in a rough, multicultural suburb in the country's capital, he claimed to be able to read people, and I must admit that he did have quite a talent for it. But his confidence into his own opinions of others allowed no room to further his understanding or waver his initial judgment. He thought he was taking an objective approach based on the observations that he made. I look back now and think he sought comfort in his analysis of people. It allowed him to sort people into categories and take a strategic approach to decipher who was truly worthy and who wasn't. His idea of a good or bad person was very clean cut and very black or white. Those that consider themselves smarter than they generally are, but are dumb enough to think that they are smart. A dangerous confidence to have, because anyone who dares correct them and mock means that they will mock anyone who tries to prove them wrong. People who deliberately keep themselves away from too much education for fear of finding out that there is always more to learn. Their self-esteem heavily consists of this idea that they are smart enough so that they have to constantly seek external validation to reassure them that they are good people and that they are making the right choices. And there are types of people who are smart enough to realize how dumb they really are. The most educated people in the world who have the most overwhelming feelings of inadequacy at their true lack of intelligence. People who understand how big the world really is and how small our knowledge of it is in comparison. I have always felt like an owl observing the world from a high branch, watching the ignorant, naive, narrow-minded people walk around in circles, never venturing far enough to escape their circle of knowledge, but just wide enough to believe they know everything. These people are dangerous, but this gives them a sense of security. They are just like sheep. They will follow the leader. They will live life on the safe side, conforming to social norms. It gives them a sense of true safety, never daring to question what if. They believe in right or wrong, and every failure is your own fault, and every success is only granted to people who do the right thing. This gives them faith that they will be okay, despite the unknown, because they venture only where is already known. A straight path frequently traveled by others that gets them safely to their destination is desired in comparison to exploring alternative options. Most people feel so strongly about this idea of the ultimate truth that they deny the validity of other people's point of view. They close themselves off to the fact that other people might also be speaking the truth, even if it's different to their own. Everyone else is wrong and they are right. Even if your experiences don't align with someone else. I have been told what I think and what I feel my entire life, but everyone has always been wrong. Just because you would feel a certain way in a situation doesn't mean that everyone would feel the same. No one has the right to argue with you about your feelings and your emotions. Don't let anyone take their significance or their existence away from you, but people will certainly try. And to all of those people who do just that, I hope one day you will learn the value of acceptance, and that you have no right to deny someone the chance to express what they think and what they feel. This lifetime of invalidation has created a need and a yearning within me to be heard and understood, something that until recently I had never managed to find. People will sit there and tell you that you are not hurt, even when you're telling them that you are. This is because they don't accept emotional pain, and they will simply tell you. Most people don't believe that emotional pain is real or significant. I learned from a young age that the term sticks and stones will break your bones, but names will ever hurt me was completely false. I hardly remember any physical pain that I may have. It is so mild in comparison to the emotional pain I have had to bear in my life. Everyone is different. Some people feel more deeply than others. I know that there are many truths in this world, and that the truth is not black or white. It's not as clean-cut as we might like it to be. The truth isn't like the written laws. From my studies at law school, I know even they are open to interpretation. In the eyes of the law, a man is innocent until proven guilty, but not in my household. My home was like a courthouse, my father the highest of Supreme Court justices, and my mother was always the jury. My sister was my only witness, too afraid to come forward to my defense. She always invoked her right to silence for the fear of crossing the judge. Maybe I envied her approach. It worked for her. She flew under the radar. I learnt the hard way that once you are on that radar, like a parolee, your every move will be carefully watched. Maybe I should have followed her lead. Maybe it would have changed my fate. But I was never really good at ignoring injustice. I have always fought for what I believed in. I will fight until the day I die. I can't sit by and watch things happen without acting. My sister's hiding may have saved her, but I like to think that I did too. Maybe I resented her for that. I always put myself in the firing line to save her the pain that I knew all too well. How much I yearned for a life free from the severe judgment. How often I begged for that to be the case. But my pleas never worked. The system was not designed to protect me. Overall, my father had the last word. He was a detective, arresting officer, sentencer, and executioner. He liked to tell us that. Over and over again, like a broken record. Always stating his authority, as if we could ever forget it. But I guess, at times, I must have. Why else would I question him? I guess I was the only one that ever dared to. Maybe that was where I went wrong. I can't exactly remember the moment I was first convicted, but it must have been when I was young. All I ever remember was being punished for my crimes I felt like I had never committed. Crimes I didn't even know existed in my sheltered youth. If I was such a criminal, I wondered, why did I always feel like the victim? As time went on, my punishments grew heavier and the accusations seemed to grow more wild and outrageous. The trials became more frequent. One theme was common among every single trial. I was never allowed a chance to defend myself, which meant it was never a fair trial. Although my father always thought his methods were fair, I was always accused, convicted, and sentenced in a matter of minutes. My father didn't see a point to letting me have a say. Why would he? All I would do is deny the truth in his mind. He had all the facts and the evidence he needed to justify my case to himself. I realize now that was his way, and he was satisfied with that way of thinking. It is a reason I will never get an apology. It is the reason he will never attempt to understand or accept my story for what it is. It's all a lie to him. It has to be, because if it's not, then he is at fault, and everything he ever stood for falls apart. I understand the weight of blame is far too heavy for most of us to carry, so we push it away. We reject it. It's easier to maintain blaming others, even when it becomes unreasonable. Somehow you justify it to yourself like all the others. I never want him to accept blame. I know in his own way he thought he was doing the right thing. He never intended to hurt me in the way he was. I know he didn't have sinister intentions, although he likes to think that I did. All you ever wanted to do was make my life difficult, he accuses. After years of begging and desperate pleas, I know he has chosen to never attempt to understand my perspective, because for him, it doesn't exist. I wish he could at least try more than anything else in this world. All I ever wanted was for him to listen to me and acknowledge my pain. But like many, he thinks that acknowledging my pain is accepting responsibility for causing it. A responsibility he avoids, but what he doesn't understand is that he can acknowledge my story and pain without a hint of blame from me. Maybe deep down he does, but doesn't want me to have the satisfaction of knowing that. I know he blames himself. He's so terrified of being a bad parent that honestly I think this is what has crippled him his entire life. Accepting me is like looking in a mirror and accepting his own faults. Something not many people want to do. Somehow, I know that there are many truths in this world, and that the truth is not black or white. It's not as clean cut as we might like. The truth isn't like the written laws. From my studies at law school, I know even then they are open to interpretation. In the eyes of the law, a man is innocent until proven guilty, but not in my household. My home was like a courthouse. My father, the highest of Supreme Court judges. My mother was the jury. My sister was the only witness, afraid to come to my defense. She always invoked her right to silence for fear of crossing the judge. Maybe I envy her approach. It worked for her. She flew under the radar. I learnt the hard way that once on the radar, like a parolee, your every move will be carefully watched. Maybe I should have followed her lead. Maybe it would have changed my fate. But I was never really good at ignoring injustice. I have always fought for what I believed in. I will fight until the day that I die. I can't sit by and watch things happen without acting. My sister's hiding may have saved her life, but I like to think that I helped her too. She wasn't as strong as I was. I protected her. I put myself in the firing line to save her the pain I knew all too well. Maybe I resented her for that, but how much I yearned for a life free from such severe judgment. How often I begged for that to be the case, but my pleas never worked. The system was not designed to protect me overall. My father had the last word. He was a detective, arresting officer, sentencer, and executioner. He liked to tell us that, over and over again like a broken record, always stating his authority, like we could ever forget it. But I guess at times I must have. Why else would I question him? I guess I was the only one that ever dared to. Maybe that was where I went wrong. I can't remember the exact moment I was first convicted, but it must have been when I was young. All I ever remember was being punished for crimes I felt like I had never committed. Crimes I didn't even know existed in my sheltered youth. If I was such a criminal, I wondered, why did I always feel like the victim? As time went on, my punishments grew heavier and the accusations seemed to grow more wild, and the trials became more frequent. One theme was common at every trial. I was never allowed a chance to defend myself, which meant it was never a fair trial. Although my father always thought his methods were fair, I was accused, convicted, and sentenced in a matter of seconds. My father didn't see a point to letting me have a say. Why would he? All I would do is deny the truth in his mind. He had all the facts and all the evidence he needed to justify my case to himself. I realize now that was his way, and he was satisfied with that way of thinking. It is the reason I will never get an apology, It is the reason he will never attempt to understand or accept my side of things. It's all a lie to him. It has to be. Because if it's not, then he is at fault. And everything he ever stood for falls apart. I understand the weight of blame is far too heavy for most of us to carry. So we push it away. It's easier to maintain that blame on others, even when it becomes unreasonable, is justified. Somehow, you justify it to yourself. I never want him to accept blame. I know in his own way, he thought he was doing the right thing. He never intended to hurt me in the way he did. I know he didn't have sinister intentions, although he likes to think that I did. All you ever wanted to do was make my life difficult, he accuses. After years of begging and desperate pleas, I know he has chosen to never attempt to understand my perspective. I wish he could at least try more than anything in this world. All I ever wanted was for him to listen to me and acknowledge my pain and side of things. But like many, he thinks acknowledging my pain is accepting responsibility for causing it. A responsibility he avoids. But what he doesn't understand is that he can acknowledge my story and my pain without a hint of blame from me. Maybe deep down he does, but doesn't want me to have the satisfaction of knowing. In his desperate attempts to direct blame onto me, he is really avoiding his own fears of failure, of being a bad parent. Accepting me is accepting his own faults, something not many people want to do. Somehow, in his warped perception of me, he has made fact to him, he has convinced himself that with a rap sheet as long as mine, his resolve is justified. Each crime is not out of place when you look at it as a complete file. In context, I am sure he reminds himself no sentence was unjustified. Just another disappointment, another failure, more proof than he will ever need to justify what he did. His behavior is excused or justified by a lifetime of reasons he has created as to why he couldn't love his own daughter. It wasn't because he couldn't. In his eyes, it was because I didn't deserve to be loved. I wonder if there was ever a point he looked at me and smiled without a hint of regret and disappointment in his eyes. After a conversation I had with him last year that made my heart shatter into 1,000 pieces and completely break, he finally revealed to me the reason that he couldn't love me. He told me, how could I expect to be loved? Because I was different from the moment that I was born. I have since spent a lifetime wondering what was so different about me. I asked him to explain it, and the only response that I got was that I was defiant, that I was difficult, that I was stubborn. None of these things really seemed to sit well with me. I never really understood how he came to these conclusions about me, how he seemed to make up his mind. But I guess in some way he did, and if I truly did make his life difficult, as I think any child would to their parents at some time, he's never forgiven me for that. I assume at some point he possibly would have been a young father, full of hopes and dreams for his child. Unfortunately, to most parents, these hopes and dreams form expectations, a standard that they want their children to live up to. I spent years trying to pinpoint the exact moment I remember at him looking at me like I was an alien, a monster from another planet, someone that he just did not understand. That pain snarl I could see in his eyes broke my heart every time I saw it. It was getting more frequent as I grew up. I couldn't avoid it. It was everywhere I looked. I could hear him sigh whenever I made an exit from a room. I could see him roll his eyes and brush off my childish delight with a cold shoulder. He would always be distracted on his phone. He never wanted to listen. He would walk away from me when I wanted to connect with him and tell him a story. I was Daddy's little girl, no more. He used to be my hero, but he was never there when I truly needed saving. All I ever tried to do was prove to him that I was worthy of his time and love, since both means the same to me. But he always looked at me like I was defective. He tried to hide it, but I could always see it. He feared something about me. and I racked my brain to find out what it was. Now I know. He feared what I could potentially become. I did everything I could. I won every single competition, ribbon, and trophy I could to get recognition. Proudly, I would race home from school to sit in his lap and show him my achievements. No matter how hard it was, the way he smiled, like any proud father, should make it feel like it took no effort at all. For a moment, everything was as it should be, until I unnerved him in some way. Once again, I was nothing but scum. Reprimanded, scolded, and told how defective I was. Acceptance is such a key part of human psychology, especially important in the vital stages of development of a young child. Without it, I now know it leads to a lifetime of severe psychological issues, a lifetime of not knowing your place in the world or your own personal value, an obsession with seeking external validation, overwhelming feelings of perpetual inadequacy. I will never be good enough, because the people who were meant to love me unconditionally just couldn't, and I blame myself for that. I tried for years to find that connection in others, particularly men like my father, to prove to him that I was lovable, but they never seemed to go according to my plan. You see, men like my father were incapable of accepting me. They were too similar to him. So all it did was enforce the pattern of rejection and eat away at my self-esteem. It added more fuel to that fire. It burnt, and I felt the repercussions of it every single day, even before I knew what it was and had the words to express it. Those embers burnt holes in my skin. I became so sensitive to these wounds that never seemed to heal. Our experiences in life shape us as people, and we develop a sense of self that reflects the way in which we were viewed as others. Why are people so surprised that I hate myself so much? It took me a long time to find people who could change this inner belief, people that saw my strengths and not my flaws. I was criticized so much as a child. The words of my parents are like a broken record in my brain, a thought train that never stops. Negative reinforcement, hateful view of myself that haunts me every single day. As the years went by, my achievements got bigger, trying to prove to them that I was worth something, and the accusations grew so much larger. The moment I showed them what I could be, the greater the cavern became of what I wasn't. One minute, I'm at a state or national championship, and the next I'm facing false accusations of being a teenage slut or drug addict. I was as straight as they came. I watched my friends do all the things that I was accused of doing but would never dare to do. Teachers and other parents would pat me on the back and tell me how proud my parents must be to have such a wonderful daughter. If only they knew the truth, that that wasn't the case. At times they were, when it suited them, when I was behaving in their eyes, living up to the expectations and shining like a star in the community. They enjoyed the fact that I made them look good. But the more I succeeded, the greater their fear of me failing became. The closer I got to someone that they could be proud of, the greater the potential for disappointment became. Each time they turned a blind eye to all of my positive traits, when they saw something negative, it was like it didn't matter what good I did. I was still the ugly person they saw me as at home. It made me resent them even more. Confused, I would wonder how the rest of the world could call me perfect and my own family saw me as everything but. They told me it was because they knew the real me, and the rest of the world only saw the facade that I wanted them to see. But who I was in the eyes of the world felt like the real me, and the monster I was accused of being at home never sat that well with me. I wasn't in denial like they thought I was. I could see what they saw, but they just couldn't seem to see what the rest of the world saw in me. Was I really a fake, a sham, a monster, a terrible person? I've fought that belief my whole life, but somehow I began to believe it. In my teenage years, I began to feel like a broken mirror. I couldn't stand my own reflection. It made me feel hollow. The person I looked like on the outside was so different to how I felt on the inside. I was lonely, empty, and I felt like a fake. I played my part as best I could. I guess I didn't feel like I had a choice. Now I realize I was missing the most valuable thing that a person could have at home: love and acceptance. I was always trying to be whoever they wanted me to be to please them, in the hopes that I would finally be accepted. But it never was. The harder I tried, the worse it got. I crumbled away inside. Something split inside myself, broken beyond repair. I lived like that for years, but I never cracked on the outside, or at least until I lost the energy to hide it anymore. The trouble with keeping it together for so long was that it prevented me from getting the help that I so desperately needed. What was the point anyway? No one would believe it, because I never let them see it. I never thought of myself as an actress until I realized I'd been acting my whole entire life. Hiding such a huge secret allowed it to fester like a cancer inside me. Fuel was being added to that fire, but I had nothing to put it out. For years it raged internally before the embers began to show. I felt like I was being roasted alive on a spit. Every single part of me was being eaten, ripped off, and at some point I was nothing but a skeleton, a pile of broken bones. Every single part of me had been taken away. People often say to me, do I think that I became the person that my parents always said I would be? I guess subconsciously, I thought if I was being accused and punished for these crimes, I might as well commit them. Apparent to everyone that my father harbored incredible anger towards me. But what had I done to create such anger in him? My psychologist and my psychiatrist kept asking me after they met my father, he seems so angry towards you. Like, what is it? Where is this anger coming from? And they hypothesized that the anger was not really actually directed towards me. His attitudes towards me must have been shaped by his own life experiences. His father died at an early age and his mother deteriorated from that point on. I was always told his sister looked a lot like me in her youth. He stopped speaking to her years ago. She had done terrible, unforgivable things in her life. From what I know and understand, it is my opinion that she also suffered bipolar disorder too. It makes sense since it can be very genetic. It seems to run in the eldest children in our family. Even my grandmother had a mental breakdown and spent years in a psych ward. Lucky me. My dad's sister was very wild, manipulative, and apparently only lived for herself. I mean, the only accounts that I have of her are from my father. So we all know that this is just his perception of her. He honestly believes that she is responsible for the demise of his parents and the subsequent pain he now feels for their loss. Perhaps this is true, perhaps it is not. But the important thing is that he honestly believes it to be true. Her behaviors one would associate with the stereotype of someone with mental illness, but he saw it as only character flaws. As to what she actually did, if you believe my father, she had done some unforgivable things. She was pregnant at 14, in and out of trouble with the police, addicted to drugs, and she, I guess, defrauded them out of a lot of money. He has told all of my doctors and therapists and myself that if I had just listened to him, none of this would have happened. He honestly believes that my current life circumstances and troubles are a result of the choices that I have made. Even the fact that I've been diagnosed with multiple mental illnesses, he denies. I guess he tried, in a way that he thought was right, to guide me on a different path to his sister. He admits now that he tried to stop me making the same mistakes as her. He has failed in his eyes. He sees so many similarities between me and her, but I am very different. Perhaps our common illnesses, we might share some traits. I remind him of the intense pain he has felt in his life. I know compounding emotions better than anyone. The things I make him feel must be similar to the things that his sister made him felt. That's the reason he punishes me for this incredible pain. Added on to that, his existing pain means the pain that I have allegedly caused him even worse. He claims he has failed and that I will kill him in the same way that his sister has killed his parents from sheer stress. But I mean, seriously, he's not dead yet. And I think to myself, if you are truly comparing me to your sister, then you should be thankful of how I have turned out, because I have not caused anywhere near the level of destruction that she has. I have internalized my illness for fear of hurting others. I was tortured by the behaviors of undiagnosed mentally ill parents. I've been on the receiving end of their reluctance to take ownership of their own problems. Unaware of their own issues, they laid blame wherever they saw fit on anyone who made them feel like shit. I know that when you are mentally ill, it's like having filters on your mind and your emotions. It makes you see and feel things through a warped perception. It alters your truth, your sense of what is wrong or right, not just physiologically, but on a brain chemistry level as well. It affects every part of your being, and as a result, you interact with the world in that state. They say mental illness is all in your head. Well, duh, it affects your brain, the control center of your body. When it's broken, everything else will fall apart. It is for those reasons I disclose to you all that this is my truth. I am completely aware two people can live the same experience and have different experiences and perspectives on the situation. This is because we are shaped by our individual experiences and life journeys. This is the true story of all events, but only my perspective of them. I am only qualified to tell my story, a story unfortunately similar to so many others. I am sure you may be able to relate in some way. That is why I am writing this, because due to the stigma in our society, we are often denied our voice, whether it be through a lack of understanding or blatant ignorance. We deserve to be heard. Our pain is swept under the carpet, our lives invalidated, and our feelings and emotion are labeled as fictions of our imagination. Our intentions are often misunderstood. We did not choose this life. Maybe after reading this you will understand why no one would. This is my story, and despite it being criticized, ignored, and denied its place in this world, labeled as a lie, I assure you it is very real. Thanks guys. I hope you enjoyed my reading of one of the first chapters in my book. Please let me know what you think in the comments. Please hit that like button and that subscribe button, because I think the more people that know about these mental health issues, the better it's going to be. Spreading awareness is my life. I live and breathe it, and people deny our truth. That's what the stigma of mental illness is, and in a way that's just invalidating our very existence. And I want every single person in the world to know that we are real. So, if you can share my videos around, feel free to do that. Post it on your blogs, your personal social media, anything that you can really relate to. Sometimes it's easier to let people, know your thoughts and feelings kind of when it comes from like a third party. It's not as direct, and it might be easier to do it that way, but yeah. Thanks for taking the time to listen to this video if you got to this stage, and I love you guys. I look forward to your comments, and I hope you check out some of my other videos and get to know my life story. And I'll let you know once I finally get this book finished, The Story of a Borderline Princess. I think it's going to be pretty great. So, thanks guys.